Yeah, Detroit's super weird.
A great city, by the way.
Like from behind.
They're like, what do you mean? Like,
Yeah, they start,
like,
they start stuttering. They start, okay, yeah, there's something there.
Yeah. I was gonna start clapping.
just start clapping. All right, welcome to Better Questions podcast. Once again, this is our episode 2. We're doing things in seasons. We're talking about we're going on the topic of true love. Now that we're in episode number 2, we're learning new things. I'm John, and I'm joined with my co-host Matt over here. Let's do some very quick introductions. Right over here. Can you guys say your name, your age, and what you do?
I'm Brandon. I'm 24. I'm a videographer, journalist, editor. Yep.
My name's Alyssa. I'm 26, and I'm a visual manager
What is a
at a clothing store for
okay.
people. Yeah.
I see. Do you want to say what clothing store you work at?
Yeah, Free People.
Oh, I see.
Visual manager at Free People.
Yeah, I think I've only been.
By the way, something I noticed, you might want to, because you were quiet initially, just as a heads up, you might want to come closer. Because I noticed you were way back, you know what I mean? Like way back on the mic.
Oh, yeah, you probably
just to
the mic.
make sure,
Yeah,
you
just
know?
to make sure.
But,
yeah.
but anyways,
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt the flow.
No, you're good. All right, the first question is, how many relationships have you guys been in, and why didn't they succeed?
I can go first.
Yeah, you can go first.
I've been in the relationship I'm in now, which is a serious relationship. Other than that, I'd say I'd been in one other serious relationship prior to this. But yeah, so just 2 overall.
The relationship you're in currently right now, he was the guest last week, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so for context, if you want
Karan Spill.
to see her boyfriend for the serious relationship, just go to the episode before.
Yeah.
But yeah, so why don't you think those relationships succeeded?
Well,
You said one?
Yeah, one. Yeah, so one that didn't work out. I was I feel naive at the time, and there was a lot of things we learned about each other. More so, I feel like I learned more about him and something he was struggling with after we had already been dating for a while. But definitely a lot of trust and loyalty issues in that one. So that's why it didn't work out.
Could I ask, like, what made the trust like shaky?
A lot of like shadiness, like just being secretive about going out to like parties and not necessarily saying who's all there, or going back to like their hometown and them going out and just figuring out things later on that
What do you think was like the nail in the coffin? Like, I'm sure that went on for like a while, and then it kind of built. What do you think was like, okay, this is it?
I think a lot of things. I feel like, to give more context, there was definitely like an addiction that was happening there that I felt like I kind of sticked around for to like make sure he was okay before like anything bad could have happened if we broke up, because that can lead you down like a whole spiral, of course. So I think what made me able to leave was knowing that he was trying to get healthy again and like working on himself, and that kind of gave me like, okay, this is now time to kind of part, and you're working on yourself, and that's all that matters.
Yeah.
But yeah.
You just didn't want to leave on a note where you felt like if you left, he'd be even worse off.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's good. All right, go ahead.
And then I've been in 2 relationships, the one I'm in currently, and then one I was in about 4 years ago now. The one that ended 4 years ago, we drifted apart naturally, and then eventually I went to Armenia for work, and then the long distance kind of accentuated the feelings of like drifting apart already, and then that's when we...
So kind of just the long distance kind of just expanded what was already kind of drifting away anyways.
Yeah, I was kind of trying to understand myself, like why I was feeling this drifting apart, but I couldn't really put a nail on it. Like I couldn't put a finger on it as to why.
Yeah.
And then the long distance was like, okay, if I did want this relationship to continue, I would make it continue, but it just didn't end up working out.
Do you think you would have, or do you think you saw those issues in the relationship when it wasn't long distance, or you only really started seeing it once you became long distance?
No, I felt it
already?
but I was like, this feels weird. Why am I
Yeah.
feeling this way?
Yeah.
Also, sorry, I'm hitting the table.
No, you're good.
That would
You're
be-
good. No, you're fine. Completely fine. No, I asked that because I actually relate. I had for context, I had a 5-year relationship, which was before my previous relationship. And I think, unlike you, I only really started seeing the problems once it started becoming long distance. And so that's good that you already were able to see it prior. And how long were those relationships again? So one relationship prior to your one now, and then you said you had 2. How long were each of those?
So the first one was almost 2 years, and then this one is going on. This will be our 3rd year in August.
Oh wow! Congrats.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. So this second relationship, I actually met her in Armenia, but she's from Detroit, and then we're long distance now too. Until we eventually move to one place, which is in the works. But yeah.
So you were long distance in the prior one, and now you're kind of going through long distance now. Like, what do you think is the key distinction to like why you're able to like, go through it now? I mean, I know you kind of went through it before, but is there any kind of key thing that you can point out that's different? Not to compare, but just the idea of like what do you think is making it successful now? The ability to have long distance.
I think I'm communicating better. Also, just I have a different connection with this person than I had with the last relationship. And I'm noticing that even though we're long distance, that nothing has dwindled. It's been 3 years, and we visited each other in Detroit. She's visited in Los Angeles. And nothing's really changed as far as like how we feel towards one another. So I'm not sure what else it could be, but it was just the connections was stronger.
Yeah, for sure. And one thing you mentioned was the idea that like I think there are some things you're doing differently. What are those things? I think you mentioned communication lightly, but is there anything else that you think in general that you've noticed in yourself that you're doing differently that might be contributing to some of the success there?
So like long distance is tough, especially if you're on different time zones. And initially, I stayed in Armenia longer than she did. She was there for a couple months, and I was there for about a year initially. And we were long distance then, and from where she's living, it's a 9-hour time difference. So I would wake up at like 4 or 5 in the morning just to speak with her.
Oh, wow.
And we'd make a schedule of like, okay, let's talk. Let's designate a time where we talk with one another, and it's been like that since. I've been like obviously not perfect, and I've had to and it's not going to be like that regimented all the time, but if you can like put aside time like throughout the week where let's talk this time for this amount of time, that goes a long way, and it helps. So that's one of the big reasons.
One of the big things. Yeah, that's cool. Awesome.
Do you think if you had that same communication, maybe those past relationships could have worked out?
Maybe not, because I already had the feeling prior to me being long distance that something was up internally. So I don't know if it would have. Yeah. I'm not sure.
Also, you have a great mustache. I know I mentioned that when I first saw you, but
thank you. I appreciate it.
I can't like grow facial hair, so
it's all good. It's
quite jealous.
It's overrated and itchy.
No, it's not overrated. Oh, it's actually itchy.
Sometimes.
Okay.
Well, and food gets stuck in there.
That too.
Yeah. But it's better to have than not to have, I'd say.
Yeah.
All right. What about you?
Like, what was the question?
Oh yeah, just in that past relationship, what do you think kind of was missing, or what do you think you could have done better in that past relationship?
I think there was a lot missing. I think too I went into it being my first relationship, and we met freshman year of college. Or it might have been my sophomore year of college, but I think it started more so based off attraction, and I feel like the more we started dating and eventually were together, we were like learning so much more and more about each other, and it just wasn't like a good fit between us, and we were just on different mindsets. Like I wanted to be with someone to like have a family, and he was on a completely didn't want that necessarily right away, or wanted to do other things before that, or it just wasn't so much of a priority. On top of that, I think communication and then things just unraveling in the relationship as far as like his addiction, that I learned more and more as I was like, it was too late. It seemed like we were already with each other. So I think I definitely stayed longer, like to make sure like he was okay rather than like what I was getting out of it, which I learned a lot out of that. And yeah.
Something that Brandon mentioned, and that kind of ties in with you, is that like Brandon kind of like you recognize or notice that something was off. I don't know, but I get the sense that the addiction thing was probably one of the bigger things. But assuming, let's say, you never found out, do you think that you would have continued on that relationship, or was that like the main kind of thing that was causing it?
I don't think it was the main thing. I think there was a lot of like goals we didn't have like aligned very much. So that was just kind of like the cherry on top of it. But yeah, it was mainly like communication and just like what we wanted in life just didn't really align. And it started off of attraction, so it just wasn't working out, rather than like finding like a best friend. Like in my relationship now, like we had been friends for years and worked together for years, and then didn't start dating till like way later.
What do you guys work in?
We worked at Urban Outfitters together, the clothing store. And I was his manager at the time, so there was
his boss.
Yes.
Oh, because last podcast he mentioned how she's my boss.
Yeah,
so
I was
actually his boss.
Yeah, and no, I was.
Awesome.
And my boss above me, like there was no like relationship, obviously, especially on different like professional levels. Like you had to be very professional, cannot have any form of relationship in that way. And then it ended up where he was in his own situation, and then I started dating my last relationship, and then it wasn't until we both were single that we were like, okay, let's try this. And it was interesting how you said you're doing long distance, and like it worked so well because we were doing long distance for a few months, like when we started actually dating. And I feel like you can just tell, like that was my first long distance relationship, and I could just tell like I don't feel like I'm missing or like a weird trust. Like it just felt right. And like we had great communication. Like we FaceTimed every single day. So I think that's important. Like you said, communication and the time zone, because we were 5 hours apart. I know you said you were, I think, more hours difference. So I think too, like putting in that effort, waking up early, staying up late, like shows.
Yeah, I think that's incredible, because usually my advice to people is if you're in long distance and just
like it's not gonna work out,
goodbye.
Yeah, like
I don't enjoy long distance, and I think that's typically a thing. But since you guys kind of are having long distance success stories, what do you think other than communication, what do you think separates like why you guys have success in long distance versus general population?
Just planning and patience. Some people think that like if it's not lined up right now, then it's never gonna line up and cross paths, or like there needs to be effort for that to happen, obviously. So just planning and patience too. And I'm naturally an impatient person, so like it's been like a learning. Like I want to be with this person now. I want to see them like every day. Not obsessively, obviously, but more so than what I'm doing right now. You know what I mean? Like my girlfriend's in Detroit. Not in a weird way. This is
Detroit's super weird.
A great city, by the way. Like great live music and great food.
Okay.
But
no shade.
Yeah. But yeah, just patience and planning.
Yeah. Now I'm curious because again, just long distance is just. I mean, I think I could do it in my relationship now. I still would just never even put myself in that position. Mm-hmm. But in your relationships, while you were in long distance, how strong were your boundaries in those relationships? While you currently, and then you in the past. You can actually you just went, so you can go ahead.
I feel like that's hard because boundaries can mean like so many different things.
Well, like to you. Like, what boundaries do you think you guys had in place, whether you verbally said it or non-verbally, like just the way you guys are, you know? How do you think that played into being able to trust one another?
I think we just communicated every single day, and I feel like too overall, like hearing about long distance relationships, I've only heard negative things. So going into it, I was kind of skeptical, but like really willing to put in the effort and like see where it can go and try. But I think just having constant communication and showing the effort, like waking up early, like that just shows like he was waking up early or staying up super late just to still talk to me, and to me that just meant so much. I'm like, you care to like be here. Like you could be anywhere else, you could be like with your family in the living room, but like you chose to go in your room and like talk to me and look up, like we would look up online games, like questions to learn more about each other, like deep questions similar to like questions asked on this podcast. So I feel like too we got really deep really quickly, even though we weren't physically with each other. And yeah.
Yeah, because in my own relationship, like I mentioned, I had a long distance relationship towards the very end, and it more so just showed me a lot of the problems we already had. I just kind of became oblivious to, and I don't think we had that. And I could say for my own relationship that definitely we didn't have that communication, we didn't have that effort, or at least I didn't, be more accountable. So it's pretty amazing, and I think that's what's successful in my relationship now. Is I don't think I've ever had a relationship that has a strong communication and effort, like you said, staying up at night and kind of stuff. Like I'm with her even to this day on the call till like 3 a.m. or something like that. And I think even small things like that really play a big part in a relationship lasting and having a trusting relationship.
Right, like the effort and the energy you're putting into it, and it's like very reciprocated, and you want to like give that same energy back and have it be even, and you're both happy overall.
And you just, I think it's also just the feeling that you're not alone in this relationship. It's kind of like, it's not really a symbol, or maybe it is. It's an indicator to you that, or like a memory to you that, oh, like they're also in this with me. They're also going to be in this relationship with me, and I know I can count on them.
Right. Yeah. And even if you're going, like through something that day, and you explain to them, like it just the effort and encouragement they're showing, like I'm not going through this alone, whatever, even if it's something like small that happened that day, like just that acknowledgement and understanding overall is, I feel like, key to keeping it working and making it last.
Yeah, and I'd say I think that does kind of play into why people don't have that trust or that understanding by not doing those little things.
Right.
Because I think often the case for most people would be like, oh, I have my life here, you have your life there. We just have to understand that we're busy. Understand I have my life, we're not together. But I think that's all that contributes to why they fail. Right. Versus it doesn't matter whether you're over here in this part of the world or if you're in this part of the world. We're going to make efforts to show that we're still in this relationship versus, we'll just find time.
Right.
It's no, I will make time.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a very different dynamic.
Right.
Do you want to go ahead?
Can you repeat the question?
Honestly, forgot.
Boundaries?
What boundaries in your relationship, whether natural just by the way you guys are, helped in your long distance, or I guess because it's currently now, what boundaries do you guys have that kind of help or support you guys getting through this period of time, which is long distance?
I guess I have to define boundaries. Just say whenever she spends time with family and whenever she's with family, I know like she's not going to respond very quickly, and she knows the same for me. And I'm like notoriously can be like a shit texter, so I have to improve in my communication. Like I'm sorry I didn't respond for 5 hours or something, or however long it was, and I've had to work on being a better communicator like that. And I would just say, hey, I'm gonna be out with my friends. If I don't text you, it's because I just want to be off my phone. I'm just letting you know. And you just work on communicating that. Those are the boundaries we set. I can't really think.
I was saying, it's interesting. I mean, it's interesting they use the choice words of boundaries because, like, I think for the most part, I think when you're in a long, and I experienced this as well because I was as long distance as I thought it was actually like 2 hours away, so it wasn't really truly long distance, but it felt like it. But I don't know, I thought it was interesting, and I'm curious if you have context, like why you chose the word boundaries because, and really because like the idea of like most people in long distance relationships don't, I would argue, like don't want to have limitations, and so I think, if anything, like I think boundaries are seen as like limiting the amount of contact or limiting the amount of thing. But I would imagine that people in long distance relationships actually crave and want more, and they're less likely to have boundaries. Yeah. You know what I mean? So, yeah, I'm like curious, like what's the thought behind like boundaries for, especially for people who are talking about long distance?
Yeah. Thanks for the call out. Yes, I was very, very intentional with the word boundary because I know for myself, in my relationship right now, if we were to be a long distance, but the thing is we already have boundaries, but some of those things are just like certain places you wouldn't go without like a certain amount of communication, or like spending like alone time with like well, if you're straight, like the opposite sex kind of thing. Boundaries like you know, like all those kind of things. You get what I'm saying?
I think where you're going, and correct me if I'm wrong, is boundaries in the spaces where, because you already can't see each other quite a lot of the time. Maybe a question that you're getting at is like, what were the boundaries you made in those times and spaces where you had almost no access to that person? Like essentially, what did they do in the time that they filled without you, and what were the boundaries in those times? Because it was interesting, the kind of road that both of you went down was more of like essentially the things that worked well. But I think a more interesting question is like, in those times where you had the most doubt or fear or like uncertainty. So for example, like maybe they spend a night out, or like you go a week without talking to them. How did you handle that like separation when you don't have the visibility? Because I think a lot of couples need the visibility. A lot of couples need the idea of knowing like what's going on. Is that kind of what you were alluding to? Because I think it's that the uncertainty is where those boundaries are really critical. Is when I don't know what's going on, how are we ensuring that we are secure in our relationship even when we don't know what's happening? Mm-hmm. And I think that's even the same for couples who are, you know, in closer immediacy together.
Yeah, no, I think you hit it. I have something else, but if you guys can answer, like respond to that first, because I have something to add to that. Yeah. But yeah, thank you for clarifying that. But now I have something I can add on top of that.
One thing when Karan and I started dating, or at least like over FaceTime, when we started dating, it was over FaceTime. It was long distance. He came out to visit me once, and then that was kind of like we were locked in from there. But prior to that, for months, we were FaceTime, like long distance. And one thing we talked about when we were asking each other deep questions and like getting to know each other on more of an intimate level, because we already knew each other as friends but hadn't really touched certain topics. One thing we learned is we were very open about our previous relationships and like sort of, I guess you can say, like baggage you take from those relationships or just things you've learned or that have hurt you. And we both had a form of like infidelity from our previous partner, so we both, I think, had like that kind of trust issue. And I think going into it long distance, it was hard, like not being physically with each other. Like you have that like, what if, like, oh my god, like, especially from what happened, like, exactly. So I think for us, we were, because knowing that about each other, we were just heavy on the communication. Like, hey babe, I'm going out tonight with friends, and like I would call him as soon as I would go back, or like vice versa. If he had like his friend's birthday party he would go to, like he would FaceTime me as soon as he got home, or even like on the drive home, and like still be texting me there. So I think, and vice versa, I think that like constant communication and reminder, like I'm still thinking about you here, like nothing's happening. Obviously, like our minds can go, especially going from something that happened kind of traumatic to us. So I think that, I guess, was a boundary we like learned about each other, and we're like, hey, let's be heavy on the communication, because I know they've gone through stuff and I want to reassure them that like I'm here to stay, like we're good.
Yeah. And to further clarify, because it sounds like when you say like the communication things were kind of a boundary, I guess what I would be interested in is, that sounds like kind of like a general rule or a guideline that you had, that, you know, to know that like you were checking in with each other, things like that. But I guess what I'm curious about, that I really want to dig into, is like in the spaces where, because that's assuming like now you're maintaining the contact. I guess what I'm curious about is like, let's say, I mean, I don't know if you guys have experienced this before, but I used to get very stressed when someone I was with, especially in high school, was like going out to a dance or something without me, and we never actually disclosed what things that would make us uncomfortable, right? And so that gave me a lot of uncertainty because we had a gray area in terms of what was a boundary when we went out and were with other people or without each other. I would imagine that's amplified when you're long distance because there's longer times where you're not talking. So what I'm really trying to like learn about is like, did you ever establish those things of like the do's and don'ts? Because I think that's the biggest mistake I made is I never did. Me and my last one, yes, but my first one, who was almost 4 years, we never established like really truly like we don't like this or we don't think this is acceptable. We kind of just, if they happened, we talked about it, but it led to a lot of fights, right? So I'm curious, are you preemptive in that approach, or do you happen to, handle things as they come?
I'm more handle things as they come. I fortunately haven't dealt with any like infidelity issues in my past relationships, and I'm pretty sure she hasn't either. So I mean, there's a lot of trust between us, and just common sense know that, I mean, if I'm going out, I should tell her.
Yeah.
I should tell her where and what I'm doing. Just because I respect her as a person and respect the relationship.
Right.
So that's just the bottom line. Is if you respect them and if you respect the relationship, then you'll tell the person. If not, then you're not going to, and you shouldn't be in the relationship.
This might be a hard question, but what does that look like in a fight? Like
in a fight?
How do you maintain the respect in a fight? Right. Like, because the idea is like, so when I was in the long distance stuff, it was like the fights were tough because, it was a lot over the phone, over text. And I think that's a big major contributor is like, we didn't know how to fight. Because a lot of it was in the gray. So how do you handle that now? If you have any tips or like, what's your kind of thought process?
Fight over? Just
fights in general, like the idea of maintaining respect for your partner. Cause I think that was a critical pillar that you mentioned is respect. Yeah. So how do you maintain that respect when things are like not all, roses and daisies?
Yeah, first of all, don't do none of that over text. Like always, always either FaceTime or call them. And if I guess you're too uncomfortable for the pressure, just like wait it out and then talk the next day. But first and foremost, just communicate over text, because things can get lost in translation over text, and they could say, oh, I thought you meant this by this, and I was like, no, I was actually in a very calm tone. You could be reading you're creating tones in your head whenever you're arguing over text. So a way to maintain respect and show that you're being respectful is just do it over FaceTime or call.
Yeah, back to also intentionality with wording, not just boundary, but also the whole sort of, I think I mentioned natural boundary. And what I mean by that is like, some people I think are more, better suited for things like long distance. Like the term FOMO, like fear of missing out. Like I think there's people who are like that, who need to be somewhere, who need to like go out. Like I'm not the kind of person who needs to go out all the time or needs to be at a party or something like that. So like my girlfriend knows is if it's going to be like this, oh, some group of friends want to hang out, so let's do that. So it's not a worry that, oh, I need to be somewhere, I need to be where the people are, sort of thing. So that's what I mean by natural boundaries. What do you think? So what do you think about in yourself, like your habits contribute to like having a healthy relationship, even in the amidst of long distance?
For Karan and I, like, we're both very homebodies. Yeah, one of
the first things you guys mentioned.
And I think we both knew that about each other before we started dating. Like, we really only go out if, like, our friends are kind of, like, dragging us out. Like, we're like, okay, fine. But we really are homebodies, and we learned that about each other from the get-go. So I feel like, too, there wasn't a lot of us like going out at night doing things that you could have like some sort of feeling about or worry from like previous.
See, it sucks.
I told you, yeah. Your last word was previous?
Yeah.
Oh, yours did the same thing too.
I'll intermission, I'll pause.
Yeah.
Right,
I think it's just us, man.
Yeah.
Did I have to film 3-4 hour interviews with a camera that does?
What do you do? So do you just watch it, or like how do you like?
No way to fix that?
It's just part of the settings, bro.
Yeah, I did everything I've seen on YouTube. I've done every setting. I even did dummy battery, a different SD card. It's still.
It's just part of the. It's just part of the function.
Is it like a sleep mode type thing?
Yeah.
Or is it just the battery?
It's like DSLR and something with like the SD card. The camera can't keep, or the SD card can't keep up.
Oh, so is it just a camera problem, or is it the SD card problem?
Well,
and that no one's made a solution for it.
I know Sony has made newer models that just keep filming without it stopping, so it's just it might be a model issue.
I would imagine too, like, what if it was just live streaming, right? Because then it's not actually storing on the SD card; it's just live streaming. Do you think that would work?
Probably not.
Yeah, I don't.
just being honest.
It has to be like webcam because these things.
Okay.
Right? That's what I'm guessing.
Yeah.
It's not suited for like long periods of things.
So when you're doing the interviews, do you just like say like, 1 second, guys, and then you restart it? Or
So you have to kind of gauge what the person's saying. If it's a good stopping point, I usually hover around like 25, 30 minutes. The camera stops at 29:50. So around like 25 minutes, I'm like, all right, I'm going to pick a time to wrap up. And then as soon as they say finish a sentence, I wave my hand or tap the interviewer, cut it, and then restart.
And it's kind of nice, I would imagine, because it kind of makes like a natural like breaking point, right? Like,
Yeah.
So, like they kind of maybe
You use the bathroom,
Yeah,
drink
I see.
water. It's like they're there for a long time too. So
I see.
yeah.
Yeah. What do you guys think of the interview so far?
It's
Or
good.
should we ask that? No, don't answer that.
Don't answer
I lied.
that.
Don't say
Yeah.
that.
I hate
You were
it.
saying that,
I'm just kidding.
Also, yeah, I was thinking of that. Just like we're a point and stop, but like kept flowing. So like I didn't want to stop it.
Yeah.
So.
Well, because we have the audio and we have the dog pooping, so I think we're good. Did you see the animation?
Oh yes.
So
you watched it?
I bet you
Yeah.
knew. I bet you knew that's why we did it though, because it pauses.
It
and,
paused.
like-
I'm like, wait, I think I know what's going on.
Really? Did you?
the audio? Because
Knowing behind the scenes.
yes, because the audio kept rolling. I'm like, I think their camera went on standby, and then sure enough, like they're like, I think one of you guys was like, I don't know why the camera does this. And
Dude, that's hilarious.
Because I've been trying to do everything to prevent that. Do you want to flip? Oh yeah, flip it. No. Yeah. So the last things you were saying was like previous relationships. You guys are homebodies. Like,
Yeah,
to that.
we're. Should I go?
Wait. Go in 3, 2, 1.
I don't know if that one.
Why would you?
I just wanted to clap because she wanted
Okay,
to clap
okay.
before,
3,
so I was like,
3,
why don't I
2,
clap?
1.
Yeah, Karan and I are very, very homebodies. We learned that from like the beginning of our relationship, and I think that kind of resolved any issues that would be like if he was going out all the time or vice versa. Like there might be more of like a conversation that might need to be had. Just oh yeah, sorry. As far as like boundaries, but yeah, because we're both homebodies, it's very easy. We don't do much. Like we stay at home, so there isn't that like worry. Like, what could he be doing? He's at home with his family.
No, I have the exact same thing because I always think like if Kayla were to do something sus, there's no way it could have just happened.
No.
Like I know she's just either at home like watching TikToks,
Yeah.
or like she's sleeping, or like I don't know, she's going thrifting by herself.
Mm-hmm.
Like she's not a party person, so like
Exactly. And I think
Yeah.
too in the beginning I would like get in my head and like my own issues I feel like I've dealt with since, but in the very beginning I would get in my head like, oh my god, like what if I don't know, what if something's happening? And like I would call him or something and he would be playing like MarioKart or just something random, or he'll be watching like videos of like lambs climbing mountains like at a certain degree, and I'm like, okay, I do not need to be worried about this man. like
To be fair, those are really cool videos. So.
no, they're sick. Or like he'll watch when they pour like aluminum down like an ant trail and then they pull it out and it's like the art and it shows like how far their trails can go,
Are the
and
ants-
I'm like, what can I be worried about this man for?
Are
Like
the
he's
are
watching.
the ants inside when they do
No,
it?
they're,
Oh, okay.
they're
Okay, good.
gone,
Nice.
and then they
Okay,
just pour
that's
it
good.
in so it goes down every hole, and you see how like deep.
are you sure they're
they go.
gone? Because I
Yeah,
see the
like-
ants actively moving before they pour.
Oh, maybe not all of them.
Because they need to get. I think it's like a dual purpose. They need to get rid of the ants as well as to
So
get a
that's-
good
okay.
casting for that.
It's like a 2-in-1
Because you clearly see them like
running out.
running alive, and yeah.
Oh,
You looked like you were gonna say something though. Or did you have something? Oh, never mind. I lied.
Yeah. So to the natural boundaries, or unless you wanted, there was more you wanted to add.
no,
to that.
that's
Yeah. So to the natural boundaries, kind of like what we were saying. Like in both our relationships, we know what our partner's doing, and they're not like just wandering about. Like, if I heard that, I'm like, why? Like, how did you get there?
Exactly. Like it's more of a
What?
concern.
I'd be
than
confused.
Yeah.
Like, you don't do this. So what happened?
Who kidnapped
Who
you?
who have you been talking to?
Yeah.
Sort of thing. But yeah, anything like that helps your long distance currently right now? Or is she just like full party FOMO?
Like, what do you both like?
Well,
Homebody, or?
I'd say I think she'd agree too that she's more of a homebody, and then I like to go out, like not like a party animal or whatever, but I like to go have fun. But we were in Detroit this past what was it, Thanksgiving, and then we were in Armenia together this past summer, and then we'd kind of have to balance that out of like, okay, when do we stay home and when do we go out and have fun? Like I went and climbed the mountain, and then she was like, I'm too tired. I'm like, okay, you don't have to go if you don't want to. Like it's hot. Like I wouldn't want to go either, but I just want to go. And she's like, okay, you can go. So I just went with friends, and then we just respect what we like and what we don't like. And then as far as like going out and partying and stuff, she knows that I'm not like a party animal, but I like to go out with friends, have fun. I have like my extracurriculars that I enjoy. So just communicating that. And then,
yeah. Question: you mentioned like communication's a key thing. So, and that you also prefer to take things as they come. So, when you go out, like when you were first starting to date, maybe, did you? And now I'm just kind of guessing, but like I would imagine because you now valued communication more, did you like as soon as you got back, was it commonplace to, to just share, or did she ask like? I would imagine just there was a lot of transparency there, and that's why you can easily handle things as they come up. But maybe I'm wrong. But I'm curious how you've been handling that as they come.
No, I was like very lucky where it just very naturally we just shared what we were doing and where we were going, and it wasn't. And when we did that, it wasn't like, oh, why do you care what I'm doing? It wasn't, and none of that. It was just respect. Right. Yeah, it was just mutual, very, very. Yeah. It was like mutual. It was mutual respect, basically.
Yeah. It also sounds too like mutual interest. The idea that like both of you wanted to share what you did in those times when you weren't together, and I think maybe you're very fortunate to have that, because in the times where I felt like in long distance or times where I wasn't connected with my partner, in those spaces where we didn't know what we were doing, I don't think we were as interested in sharing what we did, even though it was harmless, even though they were harmless things. And I think what that leads to is uncertainty, worry, because you don't make it clear. And if none of us brings it up, if none of us talks about it, then it continues to grow and build an uncertainty. But I don't know, it sounds like interest is kind of a natural deterrent to that, because you're naturally interested in what you filled your time with outside of your partner. And because you're both transparent, it kind of dispelled any of that anxiety.
Yeah, there's like zero anxiety when it comes to all that. She's expressed that she's sometimes anxious, like whenever I go out and stay out late and stuff like that, which I'm like, I respect. Obviously, anybody would be worried if someone's out until like 3-4 in the morning and like, what the hell are you doing?
What are you doing
up that late? I'm like, oh, I'm just with a few friends, and just say what you're doing, and then that's that. There's nothing more to it.
Yeah. Like, don't be vague about it as well.
No, there's like, if you're not doing anything wrong, there's no reason to be vague about it. You say what you're doing, and that's it.
Yeah, and I notice with some stories I've heard in the past of what contributed them being untrustworthy was because of that vagueness. Was because they're like, they immediately become defensive. Like they'll be like, why don't you just trust me, or why are you asking me? Versus like, well, I have nothing to hide. I'll just be honest. I think that's something I've noticed between the two of you is just if you do go out, if you do something, just be clear.
Yeah.
And it's not interrogation to ask. Like
it's
I like how you made it like it's a valid thing to be anxious about it. Versus I know a lot of people who just be like why are you asking me, or like what I mean, like get defensive about it.
Yeah, I even like my mom actually. I spoke to my mom about this as well. I have friends who are girls. I'm not. We're just friends. Yeah. And then my mom would be like, well, you have to communicate that with her, and being like, hey, I'm going out with these people, because you have to realize that, one, you guys are long distance, and two, for a woman it may be different than a guy, like as far as like how they're feeling about their guys going out with these girls that they've
Yeah.
known. So, they're just being transparent and just understanding where their anxiety is coming from.
Yeah.
And again, not being vague.
I like how you said like the respect thing too, because I feel like having respect for your partner, there's certain things that you don't even have to explain why you do things. It's just like, I have respect for them. Like, why wouldn't I do these things? Like, I love this person and I have so much respect for them that, and especially if it's reciprocated, like, just keep it going. Like,
Yeah. I think it's like a misalignment or making it something else than what it is.
Yeah.
Like, I think the defensive person tends to make it a trust issue, but then in both your cases, it's actually a respect issue. I'm asking you a question of something that's valid because we're not around each other.
right.
So by you actually like making it a trust issue, I think leads to more like, how would I put it? I guess you could call it gaslighting. Yeah. Like in invalidating like their feelings sort of thing. When it's actually about respect
Right.
is I have a valid concern. It's not anything like I distrust you, but actually the fact that you became defensive makes me more actually distrusting of you. It's actually your response.
Yeah.
And that's me too, is if it's the response actually to me with a valid concern or question, which makes me, leads me to think that you're untrustworthy. Somebody trustworthy has nothing to hide.
Right.
Somebody who is untrustworthy has things to hide. So that's why they have to be defensive. They have
Right.
to. They're trying to get away from the subject.
Right.
Versus, oh, I'm just honest with you. You know me. I'm with this. I think you've met this person. There's this other person. They're a little weird or like, all that kind of stuff. And it's like, but you don't got anything to worry about. I'll text you later. And they're like, oh, okay. But just text me when you get home. Okay, yeah. And then, you know, like that's just being respectful to your partner versus I think majority of people maybe are a little distrustworthy because they feel the need to be vague.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, an analogy actually that you and I talked about that I think is relevant is the idea of like the closed doors, and that like we each have like privacy, and like when we fill our time with like without our partner, to some degree they're happening behind closed doors because they don't know what's going on. But the idea of the closed door is that in a good relationship with a partner you can trust, one, they're always, I would imagine they would always ask out of respect if they want to know what's behind the door, and you're always willing to open it. In a relationship where one person is either afraid to ask, unwilling to ask, or doesn't care behind the door, I think that signals maybe they just don't care what you do in your time, which is to me a yellow or red flag even. And on the flip side is how willing are you? Not saying that you need to make everything shared, right? Because we all need our sense of privacy, but it's this idea of if my partner ever needed to access the door, if my partner ever needed to know what happened in those places where I wasn't or where I wasn't around, I'm willing to open the door. It's not that they're going to barge in, walk in all the time, that they need to have this, glass door thing. We all have our sense of autonomy and privacy, but the difference in, I think, good relationships is that we're willing to open the door for our partner when they ask out of respect, versus in bad ones. We kind of want to guard that door, or where we kind of, beat around the question and say, like, maybe look in that door instead,
Which can be manipulative.
Yeah, for sure.
And to add,
but there's no door there. There's no door.
The door doesn't exist.
Yeah, what are you talking about? I was not at the club at 3 a.m.
And to add clarity to the analogy, because I actually have an animation for this that I could probably overlay or something. But it's this idea of doors and windows. Like, you live in a house, right? Would you feel safe in a house that didn't have like a door, or that didn't have like a lock on the door?
Depends on where I'm at.
Oh, I guess. Yeah. If you're in the island in the middle of nowhere, you're probably not expecting guests, sort of thing. But like living in LA, or I guess depends where you're at. But just in general, there's a purpose for a door, right? It goes in and out, right? But you wouldn't want a door to not exist, because then now you're just trapped. And it's this idea of boundaries and transparency. Like the door and the house, so to speak, you're in is the boundary, and the windows are the transparency. Like, imagine living in a house without any windows. You have no access to outside. You'd become like crazy. Yeah, you'd go crazy. You're like in the padded cell, essentially. Yeah, like what did you just say?
Like an
Did you say? I think I heard you say.
No, I said a fishbowl, but I think I let myself wander. And
for some reason, I heard Chris Paul, and I don't know who that is.
He's an NBA player.
Oh,
Yeah.
Okay, I don't watch
He's on the
basketball, so for context, so I wouldn't know. Okay, but not Chris Paul, and but a fishbowl.
A fishbowl.
Yeah. But yeah, so like if you had no windows, you'd be very schizophrenic. You'd be very like cautious of what noises you hear. You have no idea. Like even though I'm in LA, because I have these windows, I know who's going by through the day. I feel kind of safe and I have an idea of what's going on outside of my doors. So having windows and having transparency in the relationship, which goes to the like the texts, the calls, knowing who you're with, knowing where you're going, understanding your partner and the way they behave, you know, when you're not around. That transparency is important. And the door is also important to where you block off like the outside world and what you want to allow in. And that's where the boundaries come in. Everybody's house could be different, but clearly it shouldn't be no windows and it clearly shouldn't be all window, because then everybody has access to your private business and access to things that should only be between you and your partner, sort of thing. And like for myself, when it comes to the doors and windows, I just a question I wanted to ask is if let's say you were suspicious, this wasn't part of our list, but if let's say you were suspicious about your partner, do you think it's valid to ask to see their phone?
I think yes, I guess. I will say in my relationship, I am heavier on the trust. Like, he's fully given me his password to his phone. Is like, you have access whenever you want. Like, I don't care. Like, you know my password. But just knowing that, I'm like, I don't feel like the need. And I also know you as a person. And like, you're not like my last relationship. You're like a completely perfect person. So I don't have that, especially knowing each other more and letting my own like baggage and issues kind of realize like, okay, this isn't that person. I don't have to like carry these like thoughts or like have these like negative get in my head about certain things. But I think too it's heavy on like the consideration for your partner, because like I wouldn't, and I feel like I'm straying away from the question a little bit, but I feel like I would never want my partner to feel a certain way, so I'll never like put myself in a situation that would ever make them feel any type of hurt or in any way, because I know I wouldn't want that, vice versa. And just having that like trust in each other, I feel like super important, and just consideration for one another.
What do you think, Brandon?
Maybe. I mean, if I was suspicious, I would talk to them about it first as to like why I'm feeling suspicious about whatever I think they're doing. And then I don't know what I would even find on their phone. I'm not sure, but like, same with my relationship. We're very trustworthy of one another, so it's something would have to really be off for me to be like, yo, give me your phone. I want to look at it. And like, I would feel weird going through it as well.
But let's say you got to the point where you felt the need to get to your phone to see the phone. You know, like you think something's off. They're telling you things that could be, you know, BS sort of thing, right? And to know for sure, right, on the spot, do you think you're valid in your feeling or asking for the phone?
I suppose. I mean, if you're like that suspicious of that person, and you're not paranoid, like your suspicion is it's warranted, and it's not just paranoia, then yeah, I suppose. But I don't know how I would answer it personally.
Well, maybe a better question is like, is it wrong for them to ask you? Because because it's like, it's hard to say, like, is it justified versus like, would it ever be wrong for them to ask you to see your phone? Like, would you consider that this is wrong? Like in this relationship, like that's wrong.
Like point blank period, is it wrong to ask
to see your phone?
No, I mean, I got nothing to hide, so like I don't.
Yeah.
That's I was like,
we got good people today.
Yeah, I mean, the reason I framed it that way is because like I think it's hard to know, because you can't, you know, in a secure relationship, it's probably hard to imagine a scenario where you would ever need to like look through their phone. And I would also imagine that both of you don't really ever feel an inkling to like look through someone's phone in the first place. So that's kind of why it's like more of an interesting phrasing to say like, well, in a circumstance, is it ever wrong, right? And I think that clues you into whether or not it's a valid thing to do. But I think that was a great response. Obviously, is like for you, not doesn't have to apply to everybody, but for you, it would not be wrong in the context of your relationship because you would never have anything to hide.
Yeah. I think Brandon hit on the nail of creating a distinction. When is it, and this is another better question, if it's valid in some degree, when does it become paranoia and when is it warranted?
I think if you have like a reason, I'm just thinking of like an old friend of mine who, like, she had a reason to go through her boyfriend's phone, and it mainly was because another friend of hers who in our friend group found him on Tinder actively while they were together. So I feel like that was like, girl, figure this out. Like, you're like, something's going on here. But yeah, I feel like, yeah, like kind of like you said, like for my relationship, like I don't have anything to hide, so I don't think it's wrong. But yeah, I feel like you would have to have like facts and receipts to be like, no, like this is for sure happening.
Yeah, and also to just convey to them, and I agree, like it's kind of like, I keep saying it, but like evidence.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm not coming to you out of nowhere out of paranoia.
Yeah.
But I've noticed, like, you turn your phone away from me. Why is that?
Yeah.
You know, and then that's why, like, what you said, talk to them first. But if you start seeing it become even more more suspicious as you mention that, they're like, oh, well, no reason. Okay, let me see your phone.
Yeah.
Like the way it's the way they respond, I think, really will tell.
Yeah.
Like, or I just always see, like, you texting this person all the time, and, like, you were, like, texting last night sort of thing. Were you texting them at, like, 1 a.m.? And they're like, just don't have a response because they weren't ready for it. Okay,
Yeah.
I want to see your phone now.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
I think that's valid when you have evidence.
Yeah, and like red
And
flags
it's valid.
that are valid red flags.
But if you know you trust them and they can give an honest response and you feel like they're genuine, it's like, oh no, blah blah. Like, for example, like, I think a good interaction is like, I just noticed, like, you do this sort of thing, like, with your phone, and I'm just curious about that. And they're like, oh no, you can see my phone. Like, I have nothing to hide. If that was the case, then I'll just be like, oh no, I'm good. I trust you.
Yeah.
Because of the way you handled it.
Yeah.
Because I know that if need be, you'd be open with me.
Yeah.
But if you're someone, like, if you clearly have something to hide.
They're like, oh, what do you mean? Like,
Yeah,
I feel like-
they start stuttering. They start, okay, there's something there
Yeah.
now. You wouldn't act this way if there
Yeah.
weren't anything. But yeah, I think you hit that on the nail. Is there anything you wanted to add to that?
No, not really. I'm pretty said what I have to say.
Nice. Cool. I mean, I feel like we went through the main ones, and I know we're a little bit over the hour mark. So, do we want to move into like just the final closing question? I know it's a little bit of a quick change in pace, but yeah. Do you want to try out and go into the next question, or is there anything that you want to flesh out?
No. I think we should try to keep to like our time,
Yeah.
so it just doesn't go over too long. So we didn't really get to, because we're going in seasons, right? And so season 1 is about true love, right? So before I get into my next question, let me just ask you guys: do you guys believe in true love?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, we have a yes.
Yeah.
We have a yes. We have 2 yeses. Now let me ask you, because we kind of talked about this concept of recipe and ingredient thing in the last episode, and I know you guys watched it, so yeah, some of it. So we're not going to get too much into that. But the question I wanted to ask this episode was, if you are looking for true love, do you think modern dating culture today is optimal for that, or supports finding true love, or runs opposite to that?
I want to say it's opposite of finding true love, but I feel like that's also biased because my boyfriend and I met like through work, and it's different from like dating apps or like, okay, we just met online, like let's go meet somewhere for the first time, and I feel like that worked out for us because we were friends for so long, and it wasn't just like, I feel like with dating apps and the culture with dating today, it is very like surface level at first, or like attraction, because with social media, like it's so huge that everyone like puts up this facade of who they are, and I feel like starting off as just friends and then working it into like a romantic relationship, I feel like worked out for us in a great way. So I want to say modern dating culture is like harder to find true love, but I think too, like that's like stereotypes, and like I'm following and friends who have experienced things with dating culture today that may have not worked out. So that's my opinion. But
I think it can be. I met my girlfriend very naturally. It was through work in Armenia. She was not my boss, my boss's sister. And initially I was like, I can't. I was obviously, she was very beautiful. And I was like, I want to take her out on a date, but it'd be weird because she's my boss's sister. I don't want to fuck it up. But it was just a very natural process in terms of like us going on lunch dates and then us doing assignments on work together and us forming a bond naturally, to the point where I'm like, yeah, of course it can happen. If it can happen to me, it can happen to anybody. With that being said, is it more difficult with dating apps? Yeah. So just solution with that would be just get off of them. If you're looking for something more natural and easygoing, a lot less, not a lot less pressure, although it's like, because we're on social media and stuff like that, it's harder to communicate what you're feeling sometimes in person. Like it's not, you're not relying on a dating app to do all that for you. But yeah, so yeah, it just depends on what medium you're using. If you're relying on dating apps, no. If you're off of them and just looking for people in person, then yeah, it's possible.
Yeah. I think it's interesting you both said you guys kind of met organically, naturally, because I think that's kind of typically what used to be the case, which is like in the traditional sense, like, you know, you go to work, or maybe you met in school, you met in college kind of thing, and then it kind of happened naturally. There's this idea I have this idea of going into a relationship with intention, where and even more so beyond that, going into a relationship already with attraction from the get, is if you already, for example, dating apps, I've never used a dating app, by the way, so you guys can clarify if I'm wrong, but, you know, you swipe, which way is it, right?
Yeah.
See, doesn't know. He's like, yeah, thank you. Yeah, you swipe right on the people you like, right? But people you already deem attractive, right? So you already are going, oh, I find you attractive. I'm already pursuing. I'm already going down this path of a relationship, versus like at work or stuff, you get to know somebody on a personal level. And I think when you start off with attraction, or when you start a relationship with intention of already beginning a relationship, you don't get to know them on a personal level. You don't get to know them as a friend, right? You don't get to know them how they are outside of you, right? Like if you just start with a date, like a blind date or sort of thing, you already start without knowing how they are naturally. I think also it attributes to understanding your partner outside of you is exactly that. Is, you know, Quran, you know your girl, because you've already seen them prior to being with you, how they were without you. And I think the reason why dating apps, and I agree, yes, they definitely go against finding true love, because if you start with intention, you're going to go into the relationship already seeing them as an object, already seeing them as just somebody who's attractive, and now you want to pursue this relationship. And then by the time, you know, you guys, you know, hold hands and you do the whole round, you know, it reaches a certain point. I think what happens is there's like this big drop where you realize, oh, I don't really know you. And I think by that time, that feeling of distance, of not realizing I haven't got to know you on a friendship level, I've only known you in a romantic sense. Most people can't really recover from that. I think they can if they realize and be honest, I actually don't know you. I think we've had a great journey to get here, but actually now let's start getting to know each other.
Yeah.
But I think most people just go, they don't know me, and then it goes both ways, and then, or we don't have the spark anymore, and then they dip away. Versus, you know, I honestly this has been a great journey, but I think now we need to actually gain a friendship and get a relationship.
Hearing you say that, I actually have moved a little bit on my position. Actually, I don't know. Yeah, I have. And it's this idea that like what you were saying is that the difference in dating apps is that you're starting with intention. I actually disagree. I think organically, I think the key difference is this. I think, and I'm curious what you think because it relates to your story and also your story as well. Is organically, I think when we see someone we're attracted to, the natural inclination is that the intention is that, like you said, you want to take them on a date, right? You actually do start out with like a natural inclination or intention. The difference with organic and I think dating apps is there are natural barriers that force you to slow down. It's not necessarily that you don't have the intention that you're interested because you can't withhold like interest and attraction and like the idea that like, oh wow, I would want to take this person on a date. The difference is that with Tinder, you are pre-setting this idea that we are going to go on a date. There's absolutely no barrier for you to develop any kind of relationship beforehand. You go into it expecting to build the relationship. Whereas organically, you can still have that intention, still have this idea. Like I'm going to see with my first girlfriend, when I saw her across the room, I straight up was like, I want to date her. I straight up I was like, wow, I just thought she was stunning. And I was like, I want to date her. But the thing is, even though if let's say I asked her that day and she said, I'll go on a date with you, I would have gone on it. No question. Yeah. But the difference with organic was that I was forced to go through the barriers and the motions of like getting to know her because no logical person would come up to you and be like, hey, let's go on a date. And you'd be like, fuck yeah. I mean, frick yeah, right? So I think that's the actual distinction with dating and organic is not the intention. It's the idea that there's natural barriers that actually force you to slow down. Yeah. They force you to get to know the person. Otherwise, they're not going to give you that chance. Whereas on Tinder, you're pre-giving that chance away. And then if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. High attraction, high fizzle, doesn't work out, doesn't pan out. So a question I would be interested in is knowing your organic journeys and like, especially with yours, you had a lot of barriers. You were his boss. And then with yours, like, I think she was the boss's sister, right? Like it forced you to slow down. Like you have to take things slow. So I'm curious with this idea of the organic, slowing you down a little bit, is there any way that we can apply that to dating apps? So maybe is there a healthier way to use dating apps? Like how would you tackle it differently? Let's say you saw your partner, I don't know, on Tinder on something, but it's this idea of like, yeah, knowing what you know about your organic kind of like way to get to know each other. How would that alter the way that you treated meeting your significant other on a dating app, for example? I don't know if that question makes sense. No, that's a good question.
It does make sense. I guess I'm also thinking because, and I remember my boyfriend and I talked about this. He was like, have you ever been on like a dating app or anything like before? And I was like, I'm not gonna lie, like I tried Tinder once. I maybe talked to like one or two people, like very short conversations. And I just remember like, I was like, how do people meet? Like, how do you just have a conversation on here and then actually just go see them in person? Because there's also like, you hear about all the catfishing stories or like, especially too, as like a female, I think too, meeting a guy for the first time, it's a little bit more nervous. Right. You're like safety reasons too, like where are we gonna meet? But I don't know, it's interesting because I feel like there's also a side of dating apps where there's people who do it to actually date and like get a relationship, and there's people who do it just to get like a one night stand or something, like a fling, like something not meaningful. So I feel like I have like my bias perception on it because I did try it like once a long time ago, and I just could never wrap my head around like how do people actually like maybe I just wasn't like confident enough to go out and like meet someone for the first time. But I don't know, but it is interesting hearing your perspective because I feel like too, if you do go on a dating app and you are intentional, like I want to settle with someone, like I'm not just on here just to date anyone, like I actually want to find someone, then I think that can be like healthy boundaries that get you to get to know each other slowly and maybe over text, like not physically yet, so you don't have that like physical attraction right off the bat.
And I mean, and that was actually a really good endpoint to because it kind of answered that question of like, well, if we do want to use dating apps because they're around, what can we do to make the experience better? And you mentioned, well, maybe if you go into it with the intention of longevity, then you actually force yourself to slow down, or you force the other person to go through more barriers.
Right.
Whereas the standard is actually like, let's get it moving, let's get on a date.
Right.
So maybe that could be an example of like, what is something we could apply and take away of like, for anyone watching who wants to use a dating app, well, maybe something we can take away is the idea of like, well, how do you slow down yourself and then the other person?
Process,
yeah.
No, I think you made a good distinction. I agree. So I agree. So maybe it's not going to intention, because it's true. Like I think most people are already attracted to somebody or knows that this is somebody I'm attracted to. But the boundary and barrier to entry sort of thing to move through the processes. So maybe it's just going with expectation, because again, I've never gone on a dating app, but I'd imagine if you go on that first date, you're expecting to see some progress. You're expecting to see certain things about that person, and maybe you're already attracted to them. But let's say in the organic sense, like in the workplace, the boss thing, you may be already attracted to them. You may have an intention that I would want to date you, or put them in that category. You are that person. You are someone I would be interested in, but I'm not expecting each interaction to go somewhere. I'm not expecting each interaction to move forward and progress our relationship. I have time to get to know you as somebody who I do have intentions for and I am attracted to. And as a follow-up question to that, do you think in dating apps there would be a way you could derail that, whether or not the app itself offers things like that? For somebody listening, how would you go about a dating app today with what we just talked about to not have that expectation of like these interactions progressing? Because you know what I'm saying, like organically you may already like Matt mentioned, is you may already have intention, you may be already attracted to them, but you get to actually talk to them without any sort of expectation of what's going to happen after this interaction. I'd imagine on a dating app you meet somebody and already you're thinking about like, am I going to meet you again? And that's a huge difference versus I see somebody at work and I got to enjoy a conversation with you, but I know I'm going to see you again. Versus on a dating app, you kind of have to progress, because do I see you again?
It's like, how do we keep it going?
Yeah, and some people I'd imagine also kind of feel, like you said, pressured, like it's a stranger and all that stuff. You don't know what they expect, and maybe you are attracted to them, and you also have to think, how do I get them to see me again? And so it creates kind of an unhealthy dynamic, is where there's expectations on both parties.
I'm not sure how to answer that. I mean, my experience with dating apps, I haven't been on one in years, but as far as like what people can do now, I mean, when I was on them initially, I wanted to see what the hell what would happen. I'm like, okay, let me go on dates, and then the dates would be like, whatever, and then I'm like, okay, I'm not gonna find a part, and people do, but I'm like, okay, me myself, I'm not gonna find a long-term person over here. So my intention was, okay, I'm just gonna go on dates and keep stuff casual, and then that was my intention, and that's what I led with. So I can't really speak for if someone had a more serious intention, like what advice I would give to them, because that was never my thing when I was on those apps.
I mean, maybe the takeaway there is just alignment, being honest with the with the app. Like something I've noticed is a lot of things that like friends that I have that are women will tell me is like just the idea that like they went into it with this expectation, they left the date pissed because it went a completely other direction that they did not want to go down.
Just be straightforward with your dates, even before you actually go on the date, because it's just a waste of time for both parties if none of it is aligned. So
cool.
I'd imagine though, I know we're like right about to close, but I'd imagine though a lot of guys don't, like on the guy side of things, they would essentially lie, and I think that's why a lot of girls would get pissed. You know what I'm saying? Like, how would you avoid that? Because I think a lot of guys, like game wise, it would be not in their best interest to say that, oh yeah, me too, I also want to just keep it casual. And then, but you know what I'm saying? I think most guys work.
You're asking how does like a woman prevent that?
Yeah, how does a woman avoid that?
Okay,
and see through that, you know?
I was gonna say, I think Alyssa would know. But if I had to guess, and let me know if I'm wrong, but if I had to guess, I actually think the waiting game is your best friend, like forcing the guy to wait, because I don't know, like for the people that I've pursued, actually, you know what? I want to hear from you. I don't want to.
Let's let the woman speak.
Okay,
let's not.
Can we re-preface the question?
Yeah, how would a woman going through dating apps, how would they be more vigilant in it, in assessing the men they go on these dates on their intentions?
Like, how do you filter out?
How do you filter out the ones who are there for that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The liars.
I don't like. That's a great question because I feel like I wasn't on a dating app enough for that.
What about in general? I think the application is the same. You know, like how do you filter out in general? Like, because honestly, I see guys like, I mean, former coworkers, former friends, like they will, you know, approach and talk to a girl at work, trying to like, or like, oh, let's study together. Oh my God, I'm sorry, I saw that so much in college. Like, you want to let's study together for the midterm. And it's like, oh, why'd you bring flowers? I mean, I thought we were studying. You know, like, so I guess in
I'd
general,
say
right?
it's definitely more difficult from like if you're talking to them through a platform because you can't see their mannerisms, you can't see like where their eyes are going when they're talking, you can't see if they're fidgety, if they're on their phone, like because I feel like on a dating app like you could easily be saying something to someone like, no, I love you, like I'm not talking to anyone else, but like dating apps, I'm sure you have like easily DMs like easily accessible, I would assume.
Someone said I love you to me on a dating app before we met. I would block them so fast, and I would put them on a CIA watch list. Honestly, that's insane.
The reason that part of the reason I tried to be on it, but I couldn't, and the conversations never went anywhere, and I was just so foreign to me. Like I knew I would never actually go meet up with someone by myself. Like I knew that would never happen, and I just remember someone messaging me like, I'll pay you money to stab me in the leg, like you're so pretty, and I was just like, I'm deleting this app, like this is terrifying.
Wait,
but
I'm
I
sorry,
feel
did you
like
say I'm bleeding this out,
no, he was like,
or I'm leaving this app.
Oh, I said I'm leaving this app.
Oh, okay, because you said he stabbed you, and then now you're like, and then you said I'm bleeding this out. I was like, wow, I don't know what that means, but okay.
Meaning she did do it.
Oh, sorry,
no,
Now I have a couple new questions on how that went.
No, I never met anyone on there, and it was so brief and it was just so weird and foreign, but everyone I feel like at the time was talking about all these dating apps, so I was like, okay, let me try it, but clearly did not work out. But I will say it's easier to look out for like red flags and kind of maneuver through like the BS in person because you can see their mannerisms, you can see like how they talk to their sister, how they talk to their mom on the phone, versus over a dating app someone could easily just lie. But I think too, when you're talking to someone physically and in person, like I think energy is a big thing. Like just feeling their energy and how they are as a person. Like if someone feels like, I don't know, like dark and mysterious or suspicious, like you might just get like the wrong reading or vibe off of them. But yeah, I feel like in person, energy, mannerisms, like the way they look at you if they're talking to you, everything, like little details. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it actually goes back to something we talked about when it comes to like asking for the phone. It's not so much the action or the act of like asking for the phone. It's more of how do they react to that.
Yeah.
To know whether you trust. So obviously everybody's relationship is different. You shouldn't like put a timeline. Oh, wait a couple months. Because I think guys, if you give them any sort of timeline, if they know the timeline, they'll do it. If you're like, in a month, you can get with me.
Yeah.
They're like, okay.
It's been 31 days.
It's been like 29 days. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the real test comes when you know, you make them wait beyond what they want. Let's say
it's like they don't know how long.
So they don't know how long they have to wait, because that'll show that, you know, they have a timeline for how much they want to get, and then you know what I'm saying?
Like, yeah, no, 100%. Yeah. Because I mean, I don't know. I think I've been on dates before, like from apps and stuff, where like they'll disclose like, oh, like I don't know, before I ever kiss you, like I'd have to do this, and like hate to say it, but like obviously like a mental checklist in my head was like, okay, how do I get there? Not obviously that wasn't always the intention, but you know, it was like it kind of like forced me to think like, okay, well, if if I do want to get there, I have to get to that checkpoint, you know. And it became just kind of like a game as opposed to getting to know the person. But
and I think, and I've given this advice before. It's also how the guy interacts with the boundary. Like, for example, and I'll call myself out, in a past relationship, you know, the girl's like, I'm not ready to have a first kiss. Okay, so I'll kiss you on the cheek then. Is that okay? You get what I'm saying? Like,
you're like as close as I can get.
Yeah, exactly. I think I'm being honest. You know, I think that's the truth. And, you know, you could respect the boundary, but you'll still go close to the boundary. And I think that's a good test of like how people. I use the example of like a bull versus like sheep. Like a sheep in a pen versus a bull in a pen. A bull wants to get out of it. A sheep can just enjoy the space and live within the boundary, right? But a bull's trying to get out of it and trying to race out of it. And I think you could tell a difference in a guy's character, whether they're like the sheep, whether I not only respect your boundary, but I will live within the boundaries. I'm not going to try to push it. I'm not going to try to approach it as close as possible or test its weak areas. Versus, are they the bull, and are they just they may, you know, follow my boundary, but they really want to break through that boundary, kind of thing. Which maybe even if they're not breaking it, it says a little something about their character, and what their intentions are, or whether they're getting to know you or not.
I would say in my relationship, we're both definitely like the sheep. Like, we're just like, okay, I'll just vibe here until you're ready. Like,
like, yeah, that's okay. Like, let's say you give. Like, let's say in that same test, you say, like, you have to wait a month. And the guy's like a month, and they get to the month, and then he's still chilling. And it's like, I know I said a month. And it's like, but I still want to keep waiting. I like spending time with you. I like getting to know you. Yeah. And I just like you. Yeah. Like, whenever you feel ready to get there, but I'm here for you. Yeah. I think that's a huge, like the phone thing, test of character sort of thing. All right. I think that's a good place to close. Any final remarks and final questions from our guest today?
I'm trying really hard to think of one. I don't.
I can't think of a good one.
what about just like advice you would give now that we've had this discussion? Like, I think that was a great closing question we did. We should do it like regularly. Is like through this conversation, like, do you think?
Oh, I was getting to that.
I see.
I was going to do that.
Oh, you're going to let them do their thing?
And then say the last
one. Oh, okay. Yeah, do you guys do your thing?
I would say,
no, but you got it.
I don't want to, like, bash on dating apps. I just am speaking from, like, my experience, and it didn't work out, like, at all. But I've seen it work out for other people, and I know now, like, my boyfriend and I were just talking about how many commercials we see with all the new dating apps. Like, there's Chisme, there's BLK, there's Plenty of Fish. There's so many now. On top of like Bumble, Timber, so many. But I think too, I'm sure there's like a dating app out there that has like the right filters or settings, or maybe one that some people might drift to more if they want to be in a more long-term relationship. I don't know the difference between them, but like I'm sure there's ones that are great. I personally haven't had the best experience with them. But yeah.
Yeah, same. Like whatever I said is obviously my experience. I can't speak for everybody. But just be patient, be willing to compromise, plan if you're in a long distance relationship. Just respect each other. That's pretty much it.
I cut you off, so you give us.
I don't
the
know
last
what I was
question.
saying.
What did you learn?
You used to do that one. Now I just don't even. Now, like, not even.
Take
just
it.
Like,
just
no, not even like that. It's just kind of like I'm kind of like kind of hungry, so I just want you to take it.
Yeah, I am hungry as well. Okay, so final question before we close. How'd you guys like the podcast? We're on episode 2, and anything you learned or learned over the course of this podcast? Like, what does that change about? How has it changed, like, how you move forward in life from the things we talked about here?
I will say it's been interesting to see another long distance relationship work out, like in a good way, because really before the one I've had, I've only heard negative things, like, oh, like, good luck, like, I've tried before, it didn't work out. But I think too it depends on like the people and the effort and just the energy you're putting into it, and having constant honesty and communication is really important, because you can also learn, like you said, like certain boundaries about one another. and still feel really close to each other, even though you're on like miles and miles away from one another. But also, to bubble it up, I will say I'm really grateful for the relationship I have, and I'm really lucky to be in it and to find someone who treats me the way they do. But yeah, I'm really grateful for him.
I'm also like very glad, happy to hear like another long distance relationship's
Work out.
doing well. So no, it's not always negative, obviously, and I don't think I've ever spoken about my relationship like this, or just in public, or just in general, just talking about like love like this is just.
How'd it feel?
Strange. I was like,
Yeah?
I was like, I don't know what the hell I'm doing, but we're vibing.
Yeah. Out of curiosity, did you ever feel like uncomfortable? Or was it more of just like, oh wow, this is like a new experience, you know? Like
it was the feeling uncomfortable was like, okay, how am I gonna put this into words? Because sometimes it's like, because a lot of the time when you're in a relationship, you're just like, all right, I'm vibing. Like there's no real words to put onto it. You're just I'm enjoying it. But you're like, oh, okay, why am I enjoying it? What's good about it? Like, what are we doing? What are we doing? What are we doing right? What are we doing wrong? Like, a lot of the time, it's not vocalized, at least to yourself. So it's just strange, but also good strange. To,
no worries. Even if it was bad strange, it would be good to know.
Express it. So
I think it's a good point you made, because like when you're asked these questions and you haven't thought about it, you also have to address it in real time, but also think, oh, what is that? How do I think about it while still addressing it? So completely understand that. All right. Well, thank you for joining us on episode 2 of Better Questions. Let's give it up for our guests today.
You guys clap.
Thank you, Alyssa and Brandon, for joining us. Once again, like, comment, and subscribe, and also put down in the comments if you have any sort of questions or want us to talk about anything that we talked about here in last week's episode in the following week. All right. See you next time.
Nice.
All right.
Kayla, wake up.
Are you getting dinner with us? Or are you getting back to?
No, I'm going back
I see.
home.
You should have told Connor to come here.
I know I did, but he